is Home Games. That is Rick Zamperin from 900 CHML Radio. That is Steve Milton from the Hamilton Spectator. I'm Scott Radley from the Hamilton Spectator and 900 CHML. Bubba O'Neill is absent again, but with an excuse. Still recovering. He will be with us soon. We are waiting eagerly, with bated breath, for Bubba to get back. And when he does, the three of us for the first show are going to not even say anything. We'll let him catch up by talking solid for 10 minutes on whatever he wants. But today, Rick, Steve, we have a little bit of a news bulletin from last week that I think a lot of CFL fans are probably going, oh. Lisa McLeod, the Ontario Sport Minister, was asked and pointed out that Ontario has still not cleared the CFL, even though they've got a plan and they've said August 5th and they've delayed it, still not cleared them to play. Now, she said in this interview with Canadian Press that she expects by that time the players are probably going to be okay to go on the field, vaccines and everything else. They can be safe. But when she was asked about fans in the stands, she says she finds it hard to believe that fans will be allowed into stadiums. She said, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it might be a bit ambitious. So, question is, I don't think that we're thinking an entire season without fans. I think people are thinking, Steve, that vaccines will kick in and something before. But how long can the CFL go if they start on August 5th and they say we're going to get going here without fans because we have to? How long can they go with no fans in the States?
Well, Bob Young says they might have to go. I mean, he wants the season played, and now can everybody finance that? I don't know, and I don't know how certain teams are feeling about that. There's two or three that could. A couple of the public teams we know couldn't. BC, what do they do? And let's be clear here. Ontario's not the only jurisdiction. It was reported erroneously a week before the announcement that the six jurisdictions in which they play had approved in principle. Well, not really. They really didn't have the verbal approval in Ontario, and they don't in BC. And we see that there's trouble in the spots where they were almost an assumption that they would play, which is in Alberta and Manitoba. Now that could still happen, given that Calgary's hosting a lot of things if they had to go to bubble or play those kinds of things. I think one step at a time, Scott. I think one step at a time. If you can get the players in here and get them playing somewhere, you've got to go one step at a time, because that's the only thing. But it is very, very, I don't know what kind of psychological effect more and more waiting will have on ticket buying fans, even if they're allowed to go in. When you went at the start, you were 100% right. That said more than 1,000 words for how people feel on that. So it's, I think, at least one step at a time. A lot of people counting on this vaccination situation, but we don't know. I mean, this thing, I'll use the phrase we always use here. Nobody's driving this bus really, except for the virus.
Yeah. I think one of the things that Commissioner Randy Ambrosi made it a point in his last letter to the fans, saying that, hey, there's going to be a 2021 CFL season, and we're all hoping that does materialize. But one of the things he said in there was, listen, we may be able to start some games in the Western cities if we're allowed to have fans in the stands, because what we're seeing in the East is just not very conducive to having people in attendance. I think that plan, you got to kind of crumple it up, because as Steve mentioned, there's no acceptance in BC yet of the return to play plan. Alberta is one of the hotspots in North America in terms of the variants and the viruses and the case numbers just being out of whack. So I'm not sure that's a possibility. I don't think there's a bubble format in play for the first couple of weeks of the season in places like Regina or maybe even Winnipeg. I think the fact of the matter is that August 5th date, and we're 2.5 months away from that, there's still a question mark there, because can all the teams, not some, can all the teams weather the storm to pay players, to pay their coaches, to pay their staff, to be in the stadium without any fans? I'm not sure every team can do that.
Well, and Steve mentioned Bob Young. Look, Bob Young has shown over the years that he will pay money and lose money to make this thing work. So I don't have any doubt about Bob Young. And I think that in Regina, they could make it work, even though the situation is unique. I think there's enough fans there that if you could open it up somehow, they could make it go. And even if you couldn't, there's peripheral stuff that, there's a few teams. But Toronto, does Toronto really want to play and lose more money? And Montreal and so
Montreal and Vancouver are the biggest issues to me.
Vancouver,
the two ones. I'm not actually, oddly enough, as worried about Toronto.
Well,
yeah,
they got deep pockets, so it's a question of do they want to do that and lose it? I'm looking at this though, and I can't imagine if there's any hope on the horizon at all that the CFL doesn't start its season, even if it has to play a few games in front of an empty stadium. And here's why: because I have always been poo-pooing the idea. A lot of people say, well, if they don't play this year, the league is dead. And I've never understood that apocalyptic view that that's going to happen, because you're going to have players who will come back. Some guys will leave. Here's though where I'm starting to get a little concerned for them about not playing again. We remember in the 1970s and 80s when they had the blackouts, and we lost a generation of fans. And our attention span these days is far less. If we have at the beginning of a YouTube video one of those ads that goes 13 seconds instead of the 5-second one that says skip, we get antagonized. Yeah. So to lose out and not be seen for 2 years, my concern now with our attention span is what have you done to the fandom and who is watching, because they have other things they can do.
Especially new fans.
But it's tough.
They didn't lose as many fans as that they didn't gain them. They didn't, in other words, replace the one end of the spectrum by the end coming in, and that's still a problem. It's actually not as much of a problem. The U20s or the U30s are a little bit more to it now, but they lost at least a generation and a half. Yep. The generation essentially that both you guys are in, they basically lost those kinds of things. And think about why. And where'd they go? Who did they want?
NFL, baseball, went to the Blue Jays.
That's right. And that was back before cable TV, when you had to live with, where you could get it over the regular air. If the Ticats, for instance, don't get going till mid-September, the team 1 hour away down the road that a lot of people, well, I don't know if they won't be going to them, but they sure have paid attention to them last year or so again, will have begun their second season since the Ticats will have played a game. And that comparison, you don't make it as directly as I do, but somewhere inside of you, you make that comparison.
Yeah, and another thing to consider there.
Right?
Yeah, another thing to consider there, you're talking about the Buffalo Bills. Here's a team that's on the rise. Here's a team that's in the biggest league on the planet. Here's a team that was in the AFC Championship game just a few months ago, and a team that has 4 prime time games, nationally televised games. So you're not going to be able to miss
2 Monday nights this year.
2 Monday nights. So yeah, this is a team that, if you're not watching CFL and you want to watch football, you're going to watch the Buffalo Bills or the NFL.
Yeah, and the schedule. Well, the NFL schedule came out, and I got to give the NFL credit on this point. The NFL never misses out on an opportunity to create hype. I mean, if they could bottle hype, they don't even have to play football. They can just do that. And, is it a Sunday night game with Tom Brady coming back to Foxborough? And, there are just a litany of unbelievable games. If you let football get away, people who are wanting football will find lots of football that doesn't involve the letters CFL. Yep. And so that to me, and that's why I don't think that the league dies right away. Some people are saying if they don't play again, the league is dead. I don't think so, but I think the league is wounded into the future because of being away for 2 years.
Well, I might just go back to another completely discussion that we're going to have a billion times. Who knows what that does to the acceleration of the XFL plans? Do they come back? If they lose Vancouver, do they have to go to Mexico City? The team, that kind of thing. So,
my best guess is Labor Day is probably the new target date, or at least going to be the next target date for the CFL. Toronto has also already said that the CNE is canceled. The Honda Toronto Indy's canceled. There's going to be no major public events until Labor Day. How can the Argos play? Are they going to play their first, 3, 4, 5 games on the road? Possibly.
It was never.
It doesn't look like it's going to fly in Toronto, at least.
In Toronto and Hamilton, it's always been Labor Day.
Yeah.
During this pandemic, that there's never been a real thought that to be anything before that.
No, and they can't now, because the announcement was that not only are they not going to play, the exhibition grounds are basically blocked off until at least Labor Day. So, and that's where the stadium is. So, all right. So we go back to our initial question. Rick, I'll go to you first on this one. How long could the CFL? Let's even say Labor Day now. All right, because I think that's a reasonable point you guys have both made. Let's say Labor Day is the new start date eventually, and there's still no fans allowed in the stands then. How long can the CFL play without fans in the stands?
Great question. 5 games, 4 games, it's a total guess. It's how financially stable is each team and the league as a whole. Because as we know, each team is different in terms of their financial standing and how much money they are willing to spend. Because, as I said, you still got to pay all the players and coaches and people involved in the game. Yeah, they're still getting some revenue in terms of sponsorship and TV dollars and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, the margins are razor thin. So I would say, maybe a month and a half, 2 months tops, unless they're willing to really go into the red. And I mean, really into the red.
I think they'll borrow money. And I think that money will somehow, in a weird way, in a very hidden way of some kind, could come from forgivable government loans that fit under other packages. I think that they do get in sometime in September, within a week or two of Labor Day, meaning moving back, not forward. And I think it'll happen to play. I think there'll be enough support within the league to do that, and I think somewhere they will get money, borrow it, and who knows if that's the XFL. But I think the government somehow might come up with something here on the QT. That's just a feeling. I have nothing from anybody.
And if Steve's point is correct, I will walk back what I'm about to say, because that would certainly throw a wrinkle into it. But I don't believe the CFL, if there is no hope on the horizon at the time that they are going to get going as Labor Day rolls around, if there is no hope that fans are coming anytime soon, I don't think they start yet. I think they keep pushing it back. There's got to be at least the glimmer of hope that if we start, there's a month from now we could get fans in. If we're still at crazy numbers and no vaccines, I think the CFL just keeps delaying. I do.
That hope has to be the Grey Cup. It has to start there. Mm-hmm. It has to be some hope that there would be a Grey Cup, because they're banking on it.
And you have to have 5 or 6 or 7 games before then, plus playoffs. So
at least
you could easily push it to October if there was, and if you think November is a time when you could get fans and you have the most ridiculously short season. But I don't see them starting if there's no hope of fans. At
the end of the day, I hope no matter when they start, I hope they don't change the Grey Cup date again. One change is enough. Leave it where it is. Hey, if you're only going to play a 4-game season, let's get it on. Let's do it.
You mean move it to January, do you mean, or just change it another week?
No, I would not change it at all. What
date is it being played right now?
December 12th.
Well, good for you, because most people wouldn't get that. They just say December. So
put it on Boxing Day, right before the opening of the World Juniors. A doubleheader. What do you think? How long would the CFL go? How long do you believe the CFL could go with no fans in the stands? Do you think this is something we should even be concerned about, or is this going to all sort itself out very shortly, and summer comes and everything's going to get to some form of normal again? Who knows if that's happening? Anyway, let us know. Comment down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Subscribe to this channel as well, so you know when we have other videos coming up. We do them often, and we'd love for you to be able to watch. Thanks for watching. Take care.